everyone, either welcome or welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my new series, Current Events. To start this series, I'm going to talk about something that anyone who isn't living under a rock has been hearing about a lot: the atrocities going on in Ukraine. We've all been hearing a lot about this complex situation from a variety of sources, but today, it all down for you in case you find anything about it confusing. To get more breakdowns about what's going on in the world, subscribe to my channel and follow my new playlist, Current Events. Now let's get started. This major armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine all started in February 2014, right after the Ukrainian Revolution of Dignity. But this war has roots as far back as 1991, following the dissolution of the USSR. In 2004, there was great tension and controversy surrounding the Ukrainian presidential election, in which Viktor, with a K, Yanukovych defeated Viktor Yushchenko. The Orange Revolution then followed, resulting in discoveries of electoral fraud. A recount was held in which Yushchenko emerged victorious. The Orange Revolution, among other colored revolutions, was perceived as a challenge to Russia's national security, particularly by Russian President Vladimir Putin, who organized a series of what were called anti-orange protests. 5 years later, Yanukovych ran for president again and won, and Yanukovych ultimately made the decision not to sign the association agreement between Ukraine and the European Union. In March 2014, Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula, leading to a new wave of Russian nationalism that involved goals of further annexation of Ukraine. A month later, the war in Donbass began when the Russia-backed quasi-states of Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic formed. Over the next year, there were several attempts to stop the fighting, all of which failed. Tensions really started to rise 7 years later in March 2021, when Russia commenced a major military buildup near the Russo-Ukrainian border. This buildup stopped within 1 month, but another one started 6 months later in Russia and Belarus. During both of these buildups, the Russian government denied any plans to invade or attack Ukraine when asked about it. To make matters worse, Russia made many security demands of Ukraine and NATO, and even accused Ukrainians of Russophobia. Anticipating an eventual invasion, Ukrainian President Zelensky declared February 16th a day of unity in which Ukrainians would show vehement public patriotism in the face of a potential attack on their homeland. On February 21st, Putin gave a speech questioning the legitimacy of the Ukrainian state, claiming it was created by Soviet Russia, which is untrue. Another false claim Putin made was that Ukraine has ties with anti-Semitism and the neo-Nazi movement, which worked as a pretense for the invasion, even though this is an exaggeration of the political conservatism that is present in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky, who himself is Jewish, refuted these claims, as his grandfather actually fought in the Soviet army against the Nazis during World War II. 2 days later, Zelensky gave a speech in Russian, urging Russian citizens not to engage in a war and refuting accusations of anti-Semitism in Ukraine. Putin organized a peacekeeping mission in which Russian troops would be deployed to Donbass, a move that was condemned by the United Nations Security Council. When President Zelensky saw the footage of Russian troops and tanks moving into the Donbas region, in response, he ordered the conscription of army reservists. In addition, a 30-day state of emergency was declared by the Ukrainian parliament, and the Russian embassy in Ukraine was evacuated. Even before the actual invasion took place, the websites of the Ukrainian government and banks were getting denial of service attacks from Russian hackers. On February 24, 2022, Putin carried out his special military operation in Ukraine, but first he gave a speech entitled "On Conducting a Special Military Operation." In this speech, Putin claimed that he supported the rights of the people of Ukraine to self-determination, and that his intent behind this military operation was to protect the people of the predominantly Russian-speaking Donbas from the Kiev regime. Not long after this speech was given and televised, explosions were reported in the Donbas region and in the cities of Kiev, Kharkiv, and Odessa. The main infantry and tank division attacks created a northern front launched towards Kiev, a southern front originating in Crimea, a southeastern front launched at Luhansk and Donbas, and an eastern front. It was eventually confirmed that Russian troops launched cruise and ballistic missiles at military facilities in Kiev, Kharkiv, and Dnipro from Mariupol and Odessa. The supposed purpose of the violence imposed by Russia was to decapitate the Ukrainian government and install their own, with the hope that Kiev would fall within 96 hours of the attack. By 7 a.m. in Ukraine, troops and military vehicles had arrived in Ukraine from Belarusian territory, and amphibious landings or attacks on land from off the coast had been reported in Kharkiv. According to the Ukrainian Interior Ministry, Russian forces captured the Luhansk villages of Horodishi and Milov. At this point, martial law was declared in Ukraine, and Russia-Ukraine relations were severed. By 10 a.m., a major battle had emerged near Kharkiv, and Mariupol and Shastia had been fully reclaimed. Belarus allowed Russian troops to invade from the north, which led to a border breach in Vilcha, and rocket launchers bombarded border guards in the oblast or province of Zhytomyr. These and other killed border guards would later be granted the nation's honor of being declared Hero of Ukraine. As battles heated and ballistic missiles continued to come in, civilians sought bomb shelter in stations of Kiev Metro and Kharkiv Metro, and 4 civilians were killed and 10 wounded in the bombing of a local hospital in Volodar, 6 of whom were physicians at said hospital. At 4:18 p.m. Ukraine time, Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko issued a curfew lasting from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next morning. By the end of the day, an estimated total of 137 Ukrainian citizens had died, which included both soldiers and civilians. President Zelensky then ordered for a mobilization of all Ukrainian males between the ages of 18 and 60 who were also banned from leaving the country. A month after the invasion, the casualties are as follows. According to the Ukrainian government and United Nations, around 5,000 civilians have been killed and 1,790 have been injured. According to the Russia, Ukraine, and U.S. governments, around 14,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed and an additional 16,000 injured. There have been between 30,000 and 40,000 casualties among Russian soldiers, though we don't have an exact number of how many of them survived and how many died because of the fog of war. The most robust effect of the invasion is probably the resulting Ukrainian refugee crisis. Europe has not seen a crisis like this one since the 1990s Yugoslav wars, and the UN described it as the fastest growing crisis since World War II. In December 2021, the Ukrainian defense minister predicted that such an invasion could force 3 to 5 million people to flee their homes. A month later, the defense minister's prediction has come true, and over 3.8 million refugees have fled Ukraine. Most of these refugees have been women, children, and elderly or disabled people. Remember, men between the ages of 18 and 60 aren't allowed to leave Ukraine because they're being drafted into military service. The only exception to this is for single fathers or men who are the primary caretakers of children, elderly, or disabled people. The countries Ukrainian refugees are fleeing to include Poland, Romania, Moldova, Hungary, Slovakia, Belarus, Turkey, the Czech Republic, and Russia, the last of which has resulted in refugees being forcibly relocated. In addition to the death, destruction, and humanitarian crisis that resulted from the invasion has also had great economic impact. For starters, there have been sanctions against the Russian economy and government from several countries around the world. What this means is several countries, including the U.S., have banned imports from Russia in response to the violence that Russia has imposed. This caused a dramatic 40% fall in the Russian stock market within 1 day of the invasion. It got so bad that the stock market was actually closed for an entire month, making this the longest stock market closure since October 1998. When you've gone to fill up the gas tank in your car, you may have noticed that the price per gallon has shot way up since the invasion. Well, a large part of that is because British Petroleum, or BP, which is Russia's largest foreign investor, divested from Rosneft, which is responsible for the production of at least 1/3 of BP's oil. The divestment could cost BP up to $25 million, and it's unknown if or when they will be able to recover this cost. In the U.S., imports on Russian oil and gas energy were officially banned by President Joe Biden on March 8th. But gas isn't the only thing that's gotten more expensive. Ukraine is the world's 4th largest exporter of corn and wheat. So when Ukraine was attacked, it was less able to play this role, causing the price of wheat to rise to the highest it's been since 2008. It's been predicted that Ukraine could lose an entire agricultural year because of the invasion, which will impact both Ukraine and the countries it exports to. Perhaps the countries most affected by this are Yemen and those in Eastern Africa, for whom the rising cost of wheat crops will exacerbate the ongoing hunger crises in those respective countries. To sum everything up, Russia invaded Ukraine, captured hostages, imposed violence, destroyed homes and important Ukrainian public facilities, and killed civilian men, women, and children, forcing survivors out of their homes. But it didn't happen overnight. This is merely the height of a war that's been going on between Russia and Ukraine for 8 years now. This all happened because they couldn't agree about who owned the Ukrainian state, and Putin made a bunch of false accusations about Ukraine's supposed ties to Nazism and fascism. We don't know what's going to happen from here. Things could eventually die down, or this could only be the beginning of an even greater wave of violence, and some even speculate that this could lead to a World War III. It's a sad, scary situation for Ukrainians, and you probably wish you could do something about it. It's not much, but some little things you can do include wearing blue and yellow to show support for Ukraine, donating to or volunteering with organizations that are providing active humanitarian support to Ukrainian refugees, or simply just not griping about the rising price of gas and wheat products. You don't have to like it, but this is a boycott of Russian imports to show support for those Russia has harmed. Remember, you're just being inconvenienced. The people in Ukraine are being forced to leave their homes, separated from their families, and sitting around wondering if those they love have been blown to bits. What do you think will become of all this? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.